Okay, hey guys. You're going to have about 3 videos here that's going to cover a bunch of notes dealing with arguments and the setup of arguments and how arguments work, different types of arguments, and we're going to go over some examples and all kinds of different things. What you are to do is, as you're watching these 3 videos that are going over this material, you want to make sure that you are getting down the information really carefully, and that if you need to go back and rewatch something or re-listen to something, make sure you do that so that you get all the information that you're going to need then for the test. In class, we're going to kind of do a review over some of this, but we're not going to actually get into the notes on it. So it's going to be up to you to get the notes now and make sure you have it then. Okay. First off, you'll see that there's a little website up here, the YouTube video. We're going to watch that in class. It's going to be kind of a setup, introduction into the concept of an argument and what exactly is an argument. And so we'll go over that in class then as we're reviewing over the material. So first, what we're going to get into here is what exactly is an argument. Okay, and you've had plenty of arguments. You've had arguments probably with teachers, with your friends, with your parents, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times you're not really arguing. You're doing more of a verbal fight or quarrel, where you may, in some cases, repeat what somebody else already has said, or you come up with some sarcastic statement or something like that. That's not an argument. A philosophical argument has 3 parts to it. And in philosophy, we call the study of arguments actually is the word logic, and that's where it comes from. So when you have an argument, you're actually having 3 things that's going on here. First off, you're having a proposition. Okay, and a proposition is a declarative sentence that has a truth value to it. And that truth value could be false or it could actually be true, depending upon what your statement is. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. The second and third part of an argument is that it must have a conclusion and it must have a set of premises. Okay, now the word premises, a lot of times students get all confused on what exactly that is. A premise is nothing more than a support statement that you're giving for your conclusion. In other words, it's basically your reasons. You're listing out your reasons of your argument to give support to your conclusion. The conclusion is the claim that you're making at the very end of an argument that is going to give support to your actual proposition. So for example, using the election here in 2016 with Donald Trump, okay, he gave an argument that if we would close up the borders and not allow any Muslims into the United States, we would no longer have to worry about terrorism. So his proposition that he was making of an argument is that in order for us to be secure and not have terrorism in the United States, we need to close the border and not allow any Muslims in. His premise is, then he argued that basically Muslims are the reason for terrorism, and that basically all terroristic activities are committed by Muslims. So in conclusion, then, by not having any Muslims, we would not have any terrorism. So there's his argument. And now again, remember I said an argument can be good or bad, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But that's basically what an argument is. It's the setting up of those 3 key things. The process then of setting up those reasons from your premise to your conclusion is called an inference. And again, you could, in many ways, in many arguments that are not valid or not basically sound, which we're going to get more into that here in your next slide, or I'm sorry, your next video. A lot of times people who come up with these different arguments don't do a very good job of making very good premises, and the premises don't follow in a good format, so therefore they don't match up with the conclusion very well. And the example I just gave you of Donald Trump would be a good one that doesn't follow very well at all. But basically that's how an argument is set up then. Okay, the second part then about an argument is that it does come in many different forms. But the key to an argument, again, is that it must have premises in order to back up its conclusion. If there is no premises, if there is no actual reasons that you're giving in your discussion or in to support your proposition, and you don't have a conclusion, then you're not giving an argument. Now, what's the difference between a premise and a conclusion? Really, in many ways, they're very similar. It's really in how you set up the statements as to which one is going to be which. So it's the use of keywords to help determine what's going to be your premise and what's going to be your conclusion. Those key words are for some examples of those for a premise would be such as when I say because of the fact that most terroristic events in the world are done by Muslims, or if I say since most of the terroristic acts are done by Muslims, those keywords, because, since, due to the fact, etc., those keywords help set up my premises then. The keywords that's going to set up my conclusions are going to be such things as therefore, it follows that, thus, we get rid of all Muslims, we have no terrorism. Okay, that's how it sets up your conclusion, is by coming up with those keywords. Arguments can be both good and bad. A good argument is one that has a conclusion that's worthy of acceptance, that has a solid inference, and that its premises are true, which we're going to get more into that later. A bad argument is one that fails to do so on all accounts. So that's going to finish up this first video, and we'll get into your second video, which would be dealing with the different types of arguments and examples of those next.